I mean, we're still spraying glyphosate
Right.
right next to all our crops and then eating the food here legally. In
Yeah.
Europe, you can't use glyphosate. In the 60s and 70s, I smoked like a fiend. I was lighting up Marlboros all day. My parents smoked like a fiend. Those companies are now food companies. Philip
Mm-hmm.
Morris. So do you
Yeah.
feel better now eating the food that's from Philip Morris, even
Yeah.
though you're good not having their cigarettes? Funny how.
Come here, though. Yeah, he's crazy, see? You are you.
We're now about 35 miles south of San Francisco. So we're in Northern California, and I'm right at the edge of the redwoods and close to the ocean.
Sure.
But I grew up in Altadena, California. And so if you've been watching the news, that's a familiar name.
Yeah. Wow.
That's the place that's pretty much gone now. It's just gone.
Ugh. Yeah, it's so crazy. More and more of these crazy disasters keep affecting us. You know, in Florida, I had a lot of issues with Milton. Not as much as I just had to replace my roof. We got very lucky, but my father had to replace essentially his whole condo. Got 4 feet of water. So yeah, it's wild. But you know, this is Mother Nature telling us, "Hey, man, I'm pissed." So listen up.
That's right. Listen up.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to listen to a show that you did with Jeremy. Is that right?
Jeremy.
What's his last name?
I've had a couple
Great,
Jeremys on
greater about health and
health. Yeah, that's right.
wellness and so on.
Yeah,
And
that was a cool one. Thanks for that.
yeah, and it was kind of sweet listening to you two guys in your 30s talking about life and future and so on. And I thought, I'm going to come into you now as a voice from beyond. All right.
Thank you for
I'm
that.
somebody from another universe.
I love it.
Well, here I am. I'm going to be 80 in a year. I'm entering my 80th year.
Oh, wow. You don't
And
look 80, by the way. Congrats on that.
well, thank you. What does 80 look like? This is what 80 looks like now.
Great question. Yeah.
And it was kind of sweet because a lot of what I'm out here talking about, you guys are saying, yeah, well, you got to start now and you got to do this and you got to do that. Why don't you talk to somebody who has been there and done that
Yeah.
and is another 40 years, 50 years along
Yeah.
in that journey?
Yeah. This is going to be such a cool perspective. So I appreciate you hopping on. This is going to be fun.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me, but it is fun because you know what? We're invisible. We are, whenever you see an ad about, and you guys are talking about advertising, how much you hate it and so on, but whenever you see an ad about a hair product or anything, it's for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond. Like this thing happens where you fall off a cliff and you vanish, and you're not sort of really alive anymore or something.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
This
here
cool.
from beyond to tell you, we're still alive.
Thank you. Yeah. But if you can give my listeners just kind of a quick little snippet of what you currently do, what you got going on. I know you got a new book coming out. I was looking at that. So
I actually have a book that I'm still talking about. It came out 3 or 4 years ago, but it's happily becoming more relevant all the time because when it came out 3 or 4 years ago, nobody wanted to talk about sugar-free. Right. The reaction was typically, oh, no, that's okay. No, thanks.
Right.
I'm good.
Right? Yeah. Like we are with most things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, but what's happened out in the blogosphere and manosphere and podosphere and everything, people are bit by bit discovering that not eating sugar is, if you're only going to do one thing, Grandma here wants to tell you that if you just do one thing for yourself, for your family, right now, that is going to pay off hugely for the rest of your life, it's don't eat processed sugar.
Yeah.
Just know. And when people say, well, yeah, I'm cutting back and so on, I always say, well, if I said, yeah, I'm cutting down on my heroin, what would you tell me? Maybe just knock it off.
Right.
Because a couple key reasons, in case you didn't know this, you probably do, but there are people out there who still don't know that it is, in every sense of the word, not metaphorically, it is addictive. Absolutely, which is why the American big food industry has put it in everything. It's in anything with a label, pretty much, has got sugar in it.
Yeah.
So it is addictive, absolutely. The other reason...
And not only is it processed food, but also heroin. Both are equally addictive.
Yeah, well, actually, sugar is more addictive than heroin. Whoa. If you look at the studies with the mice and everything, you know what? Sugar wins.
Yeah, I did read that mice study. I wasn't sure how long it's been going on, if that was interesting, because I thought that was super fascinating to where I think it's the same study where they gave heroin to two different rats in different cages, right? And then they also gave them processed foods, and they wanted more of the foods than they actually wanted the heroin, right? They gave them both options. Is that the study? Yeah.
That's one of the studies.
That's one. Okay.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And of course, nutritional studies are notoriously hard to do and full of prejudice in many ways. But it's become pretty clear that sugar is not a thing you want in your body. But the other thing that I want all of your listeners to know, if they don't, comes from particularly the other day, my daughter, my youngest, is a nurse practitioner. She's also a cancer survivor and just finished her second round of treatment and is doing great. Thank you. All good.
Awesome.
But actually now oncologists are finally handing out materials that say what to eat, what not to eat. And guess what you shouldn't be eating? Sugar. Because guess why? Sugar is a thing that cancer cells love so much, they use it for bait when they want to find cancer cells. They inject a sugar-based chemical into your body that will find the cancer and light up in the scan and show them where it is. It's bait for cancer. So that's what I want y'all to tell yourselves next time you're tempted. But I'm here to save you. It's all right. I'm here for you.
We appreciate
the book that came out 3 or 4 years ago, Brownies for Breakfast, I wrote it for diabetics like me, who want to eat happily and joyfully and love their food and have it and so on, and want sweets and want all the things that they didn't think they could have. They just need to know a few things about how to prepare those foods. And of course, in the process of researching the book and doing the book, what you find out is it's just the way everybody ought to be eating. It's the same thing. If you don't want to have heart disease, if you don't want to have liver disease, whatever, this is how you do it. And it's like a 3-word diet. Are you ready?
Good.
Eat real food.
Shocker. Oh, no.
There it is.
Yeah. It's wild. I mean, not only do so quick background on me. So I was a personal trainer years ago, since my certification is long expired, but I've always had a passion for fitness in general. And I've always been pretty fit and healthy. And then,
you look fabulous, Tony, by the way. You just,
thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I mean, this is the waist
for a young
up,
guy,
so
you look really good. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I've always kind of had that drive to be healthy and yada yada. Of course, when I was in my 20s, like most, I treated my body like an amusement park, which I think kind of led to my chronic illness that I have. Which when I was 25, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and
the tough one.
Yeah, it was very tough in the beginning, and it's still tough, obviously. But after seeing a bunch of gastros and a lot of specialists, all they kept doing was just give me medication. My symptoms kept getting worse and worse and worse. And once I started this podcast about 5 years ago, and really diving in, talking to experts in the field of that, very early stages in my podcast, I talked a lot about health, wellness, which I still dip a lot into, but now I'm kind of a little bit more broad when it comes to the topics. But when I realized that all these experts I was talking to and all the research I started doing and people with Crohn's that I had on my podcast that I've talked through, it all was one thing. To your point, it all led to nutrition. And it really got me thinking, because I have family members with, other chronic diseases. And like you said, when you go to the doctor, typically when you have something wrong with you, no matter what it is, it always comes down to eating. They always tell you to cut out either booze or cut out processed foods, right? And then it makes you think.
Now they do. They didn't used to.
Correct. Right. Well, I think because now, thank goodness, we're able to get all this information, right, in the tip of our fingers, literally on our phone. To now, you'd be an idiot if you're a doctor that doesn't say, get a second opinion, do your own research, that type of thing. Because I found out after having a lot of doctors on my podcast that most schools, when you get your doctorate, the entire curriculum is less than 1% talks about nutrition. It's like
teach nutrition.
Nothing.
No,
it's like 20 minutes, I think they go over if you were to break it down. Yeah. It's absolutely fascinating, because literally any illness you get, aside from, a car accident or broken bones, but anything like internally, they always tell you to lay off certain foods that you and I would normally consume. And it makes it tell you, well, why don't you just lay off that before you get the disease?
Right.
And that way you don't have to tell the doctor to do it. And that goes with alcohol too. I mean, I'm almost 2 years sober, and I see my chronic, not only just breakouts in skin, but just my Crohn's in general. That's helped a lot. Of course, I'm mostly plant-based and whole food, so that helps a lot with my issues. And I talk to other Crohn's patients. They're like, I just can't cut out the sweets. I just love my sweet. And I'm like, do you still have episodes? They go, yeah, every week. And I'm like, what? What is happening here? Why do you do it? Oh, other side. What do you got there? Well, let me see. What's she working with? Brownies for breakfast. Hold it up for us, Lynn. Oh, yes. I will link that in the description below. Check out Lynn's book. That's amazing. And I assume you go over a little bit about how to make good food healthy?
Yes. And it's all super simple. I mean, I had 3 kids. I was a single mom. I like single moms and 3, I had way too much to do and way too little time. And I had to stay healthy. My mom had died when I was 18 and she died of chronic disease. So I had seen firsthand, up close, very personally, what chronic disease does to a family. Wow. And Americans don't stop and think about what the cost really is. Yeah. The cost is hugely financial. Mm-hmm. It breaks the family. Few of us can ever afford to go through a chronic, even if you have insurance.
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
It's still just devastating financially. Mm-hmm. It's devastating emotionally. It's devastating in all these other ways. And it was my normal growing up. I didn't really understand, that it wasn't that way for a lot of other families. Right. But when I got out into the world, one thing I knew was that I did not want to encourage chronic disease in myself in any way. I wanted to be alive for my children and for myself. I wanted to be well. And so I just started educating myself a long time before most, like you said, your 20s. Well, I graduated from high school, Tony, in 1964. Okay. Does that ring any bells for you that year?
Yeah, it was about 20 years before I was even on this earth. But yes, it rings a bell.
Okay. But 1964, the Beatles, you know.
Sure. Great era.
And the demonstrations and the Vietnam War and the sexual revolution and
the drugs, the partying. Come on. It was great, I'm sure.
And I was in California. I grew up here, and I went from high school, I went straight to UCLA. And it's a short motorcycle ride, in case you don't know this, from the beach. So that may have influenced my education
in a fairly
major way, So anyway, and then I took off for Europe, and it's a long story, and there's a lot more to it. But what has stayed with me and served me well all these years is I know how to sling some hash. I know how to put a meal on the table in 15 minutes and make it good and make it cheap. And that was how I entertained my business friends, my clients. That's how I raised my kids. That's what my friends were used to. It was all around a table.
Yeah.
And it's an education and it's a communion. And one of the things that Jeremy said when he was on your show was talking about, well, food basically is just food. It's fuel, and we have to understand that, honey, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's community.
Yeah.
It's a sacrament. I mean, it's the center literally of our social universe, of our civilization. It's around a table or around, other people don't necessarily have the table, but they will sit in a circle and
Sure.
And you honor your food.
Yeah. 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 That's one thing. I had a doctor on my podcast a few episodes ago, and he was giving me some really interesting insight about how the impact of just lighting a candle while you're eating can have.
Absolutely.
And you don't necessarily have to be religious or spiritual, but just looking at your food and almost preparing the food to go into your body and taking a few moments to show appreciation.
It has a physiological effect.
That's right.
It's what you're seeing in your food, what you're smelling in the food, the texture of it, the color on the plate, all of it prepares your body to receive the nutrition.
Yeah.
And so it's important to understand that it's not just like put the diesel in and, fill her up and no.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just fuel.
Yeah, that's another thing Crohn's has taught me as well, amongst other things, just not only just appreciation for food, but how I consume it and how I eat it. And when I ingest the food, when I'm chewing it, I take my time a lot more now because I'm like, I want my body to really, break it apart before it even hits my stomach. And you appreciate flavors so much more as opposed to just putting it in your face and swallowing it after a couple bites. You set your fork down and you chew. And you take your time. You finish with chewing, and then you maybe have a conversation with your spouse or your kids, whatever. But putting that fork down and chewing it, it just makes me appreciate food more versus like what I used to do, which is even when I cooked at home, it might take an hour to cook a big meal for your whole family.
Not in my house. But
not in your house, right?
you go on with your bad self. Yeah.
Sure. But, in general, if you're having, steaks and maybe some sweet potato or whatever, it might take you some, an hour of prep and all that. And then you eat it in 10 minutes. And it's like you ruin the whole appreciation of what food is. And I love cooking, especially now that I have a daughter that's 18 months. I put her up on this little tower and she stands, right on the kitchen next to me in the tower and just watches me whisk things and flip things.
And I hope you're putting the tools in her hands. She's not too young.
Absolutely.
And this is something that I go all grandma on you here.
Yes.
You have to teach the kids that you are not their servant. You're their teacher.
Absolutely.
And so everything that you're doing, putting the dishes in the dishwasher, putting the dishes on the table, clearing all of it. And she's not too young to learn. And they, at this age, they are thrilled when they can do this. They're so pleased at themselves.
Yeah.
And
I mean, literally, we would take minuscule tasks that, we used to find boring, my wife and I, and there is like a defibrillator to these tasks. Like we go grocery shopping now, and when we go grocery shopping, we grab an apple and we give it to my daughter, and she's walking around, and I go give it to mommy, and she walks over, hands it to mommy, and then when we get back to the house, she'll literally put the food in the pantry for us. Obviously, she can't put it on the shelves, but we tell her to go put it in the pantry, and she sets it there, and it's like watching her do these things. Don't
ever underestimate how capable she is, even as tiny as she is. And my kids actually started reading labels when they could barely do the alphabet. They knew that they had to take the food off the bottom, because we always had to shop together, and they would take the food off the bottom shelf or the second shelf, and they would look at it and I'd show and so on, and we would read a label. They understood that that label was all important. What is in this stuff that they're eating? And Also, though, you said about talking at the table, and taking that time between bites. This is why we want to encourage people not to eat out of a bag in the back of a car anymore.
Right. Yeah.
We have way too many families who a parent is sitting behind the wheel eating out of a bag, and the kids are in the back eating out of a bag. So the eating out of a bag part on its own is not great. But if you're isolated, so there's no conversation, there's nothing. It's just stuffing your face with whatever the stuff is in the bag.
Yeah.
That's not what I want for you or anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank goodness my wife and I are on the same page and have been ever since we've been together, where like we don't eat fast food at all. And, even if we do, it's that quick, maybe Chipotle or Chick-fil-A or something like that, where we'll still bring it back home and we'll put it on a dish, like a ceramic plate, and we spread it out as if we did cook it. We don't want to feel like we're rushed when it comes to food. And thankfully,
here's one of my food tips that you're going to like then.
Oh, please.
We have a wonderful taqueria where I am. Very fresh food. It's local food, and we know them, and it's a good place to source food. We ask for a shrimp burrito with no rice, and bring it home and cut it. If it's me, it'll be cut in probably 3 pieces, and then I put it on a plate of shredded cabbage. If I have purple cabbage, that's what I use because it's so beautiful. And you put that third of a burrito on the shredded cabbage, and you put a little, if you're eating cheese, you put the cheese on top, or a vegan cheese on top, and some of your great salsa verde on top, your good green salsa on top. You nuke it for a minute. And it's a banquet now, and it's gorgeous, and it's got the leafy greens that you should be eating, and it's a third of the burrito and not the whole dang thing.
Yeah, it's such a great tip. That's such a great tip. I always tell people, especially because we don't eat out anymore. Thank goodness I look at it as like a huge positive because I have Crohn's. So like everyone feels bad when they're like, hey, do you want to eat out? Yeah. They're like, do you want to eat out? I was like, why don't you just come here and we'll cook? You know what I mean? Like, so it's better. But when we do eat out, it's always great. Even though we have the toddler now, we still get 1, maybe 2 meals max, but we're able to separate it, to your point, at home. And it feeds us for 2-3 days because any American portion is huge enough for 3 people, 1 meal. It's, like you look at Chipotle. I mean, sometimes my wife and I will have 1 bowl or something like that, and we'll literally make that 3 meals because it's so hearty and dense, and not just the food itself, but you just look at the caloric intake. It's crazy. Like it's 1 meal at Chipotle or Chick-fil-A is the amount of calories you're supposed to intake on a daily basis. So you should separate it just for your health in general. Not just to satiate, but it's just way too many calories.
Well, and one of the big things that people I think don't understand, and I don't talk about dieting. I don't record my calories. I don't measure my grams of stuff. I'm too messy and too impatient. Right. I just won't. But what you learn when you are eating really good food, real food, whole food, is that you fill yourself up pretty quick. I mean, one example is when you eat one of my brownies. Ordinarily, people will say, I can eat 4 brownies, I can eat a whole plate of brownies, whatever. You eat a couple of these little puppies, and you've had a meal. They're real food. They're made of pumpkin, nut butter, cocoa, eggs or egg substitute, cinnamon, and then I sweeten with, and this is something else that I'm spreading the word about because I find so many people don't know about it. It's a sweetener that is a whole food sweetener. It's real food. It's made out of 1 kind of food. It's squished out of typically corn, some other vegetable that has enough of the right chemicals in it. It just squishes the food. Allulose is a wonderful sugar substitute. It doesn't bother your belly. It doesn't give you it doesn't spike your blood sugar. It's no calories, nothing. You can get it in a golden flavor if you want, and it comes in powdered and it comes in granule. So I sweeten typically, or with monk fruit, my sweets. But so this brownie, nut butter, pumpkin, cinnamon, cocoa, these are health foods.
Yeah. You're just combining all of these great ingredients into one delicious. Yeah.
And I trust me, if you didn't tell anybody, and you shouldn't when you serve them, never say a thing about it. Just, would you like a brownie? And of course, people are going to go, who hit me, right? Okay. And then they eat the brownie, and then you can tell them that they've just eaten a healthy meal.
Yeah.
But it's shocking to people, the idea that that could be true. And it is quite true.
Yeah. And, it's also, it's habit forming too. One thing I've noticed is, I didn't like to switch to, plant-based whole foods. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, whether it's fast food or going out to it's good. We know it's good. I mean, it's good intentionally because it's full of preservatives that literally get you addicted. Like Chick-fil-A is a great example of a really shitty, well-marketed fast food joint where it's got 64 ingredients in that chicken sandwich, which is crazy when you think about it.
And where did those poor little chickens come from?
Exactly. And who knows as they continue to scale. I mean, I always use the McDonald's example, which is a great example. When they first came out, it was farm to table. It was 100% beef patty. But then as you scale, you eventually run out of agriculture and cows, and you have to factory farm it and outsource, and you have to, do everything you got to do to make sure you have enough food at your restaurant to feed, 330 million people, right, in the country. Yeah. And McDonald's, I think, had good intentions in the beginning, just like a lot of fast food chains. But as you scale and grow, they're forced to profit by cutting corners and just making things unhealthy for us. And, it's, I think you talked about it earlier where Americans kind of have this perception of food and how it tastes and versus like Europe and other countries. And I think that's because we don't appreciate the food. It's an egotistical thing where we look at food as if we don't care if it hurts us. We want it to taste good because we're American. And in America, we drink beer and we have our steak and our ribeyes and we season it with a bunch of salt, even if it's going to kill us. We're American and we're allowed to do it because hoorah. And
well, maybe ego trip. In some parts of America. And I think too, though, Tony, my life was very influenced by going to France as a young person. I was, I guess, 20 when I went. Yeah. And, right away, and I had a couple of French friends in college, and they were always saying, oh, you Americans put sugar in everything. And we'd go, what do you mean? Well, look at this. That's got sugar in it, and that's got sugar in it. Because their taste was different than they really tasted the food in a different way than we did. And in fact, another thing I like to tell people is that when you begin to eat better and you don't eat sugar, your saliva actually changes. It chemically changes. So things taste different to you. I can't eat sugar anymore easily. It just doesn't taste good. Yeah. And it makes me thirsty. And yeah. So, but that's a chemical thing that happens. But so being in France and learning how to make some foods over there and seeing how it was done. And so one of the recipes in my book it's called French as Hell cassoulet. And if you've been to France, you know that cassoulet is kind of a street food. It's kind of a country food, but the French are very competitive about who makes the best cassoulet. And I do not put goose fat in mine. You're welcome to do so if you wish. But it's a pretty darn good cassoulet. It's a bean dish, of course. And a thing that Americans learn growing up, trying to get healthy, is beans. They're great food. Yeah. They're good for you.
Yeah. The magical fruit, right?
They are the magical fruit. Absolutely. Yeah.
And, that's one thing where I think companies are smart enough to know that sugar, obviously, probably in the 70s, 60s, they realized that sugar was addicting. And the more they put in our foods, the more we're going to want it. I mean, this is not uncommon where it's, if a corporation figures out one thing that's going to get consumers addicted, i.e. advertising, food, I mean, you name it, they're going to double down on that. And I think that's where I go back to the analogy of like, we're just so egotistical and narcissistic in America to where medication ads, right? They don't have those in Europe.
Please. What's hilarious is
Yeah.
we don't watch TV actually,
Nice.
but when we travel, we'll usually turn on the TV in a hotel room for a little while,
Yeah.
and it's hilarious because there'll be ad after ad for all this awful food, and
Right.
then after that, ad after ad for all the stuff you have to take, Pepsid and so on, for
Yeah.
your belly because you've eaten this awful food. So yeah,
That's hilarious.
no,
And you
it
know,
is. Well, it's
that's just
sad.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
as Americans, we just don't,
Yeah.
if you tell us that we can't do something or we shouldn't eat this or we shouldn't eat that, it's almost like we want to eat it more. And we were recently in Italy, actually, talk about Europe, and I was able to eat cheese,
And
sauce, bread, and
Yeah.
I had no Crohn's
Right.
accidents or episodes.
I mean, we're still spraying glyphosate
Right.
right next to all our crops and then eating the food here legally. In Europe, you can't use glyphosate.
That's right.
And that's the thing that all of us have to be responsible for making sure changes. And another here, voice of the past now speaking to you again, in the 60s and 70s, I smoked like a fiend. I was lighting up Marlboros all day. My parents smoked like a fiend.
Yeah.
But guess what? Those companies are now food companies. Philip Morris, right?
Yeah.
So do you feel better now eating the food that's from Philip Morris, even though you're good not having their cigarettes?
Yeah. That's right. Because they knew, they're smart. Again, they know, cigarettes, people are starting to understand cigarettes kill them. Okay, let's buy all these food companies and we'll make the quick switch. And I think, luckily, depending on, it doesn't matter who you really voted for or believe in, everyone listening out there. But I think, RFK.
Don't kill us.
You don't kill us. But I don't necessarily agree with everything that he does. But I think the one great thing that he is doing is shining the light on what everyone knows deep down, which is we are the most, quote unquote, richest country in the world, but we're the most unhealthy country in the world. And ironically, we spend the most on healthcare versus any other country.
Anyone who pays any attention at all knows that our healthcare system sucks. It's bad.
Yeah.
It needs to change. We need to go to, if not a single payer, something pretty close to it.
Yeah, that's right.
And count me in. That's what we need to do. And absolutely we need to push our governments, local, state, and national, to move in that direction.
Yeah.
And for sure.
Yeah.
And big food is a problem.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But you can do that by shopping at Trader Joe's, order from Thrive Market. There are other sources for great food that don't buy in to all of the horrible nonsense that you see in the center aisles of Safeway or
Walmart or whatever.
Winn-Dixie or Walmart or whatever.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility not to buy the crap. Just stop eating crap. There you go.
Yeah.
That's a big political statement you can make. Truly, stop buying crap. Stop eating crap. Stop feeding it to your kids.
Yeah.
End of story. That easy.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people that I've talked to that are fellow parents that don't really share my beliefs in this matter. It's interesting because they're like, hey, we're busy. We don't have the money to buy organic, yada, yada, yada. And at some point I can appreciate that because it is more expensive and I get that. And that's not fair because, again, you go back to Italy or other parts of Europe, they don't have organic. Everything's organic. Yeah. It's just all right. So it's all the same price. I mean, I remember when we were over in Italy, we were literally spending 20% less than what we were doing, here for like the best meal ever. Over there, it's just like the basic
It's
organic.
regular food.
It's regular food. They don't even call it organic. It's just food. So I get how it is expensive, and that is what's kind of shitty. And again, I think in the next few years, hopefully things are going to change when it comes to the market. You see it happen with milk, right? With the dairy industry where the profits are down because everyone's like, oh, we don't need milk. We can have almond milk or we can have, a coconut milk or some substitute. So now the dairy industry is like pivoting and now they're starting to focus a little bit more on healthy stuff. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think it's interesting when we as consumers, we fight back, corporations are forced to do what we want. And I'm hoping that in a few years that, a lot of these corporations will give us an even slate of like organic versus the non-organic. There should just be organic. There shouldn't be, two options. Like shampoo's bad for you. You shouldn't have like cruelty-free vegan shampoo. If the other shampoo's bad for you, we should get rid of the other shampoo then, right?
This is going to take a certain amount of activism, and it encourages me that a lot of young families your age and between your age and mine are more conscious, more educated than we were when our babies were tiny. But I mean, the difference, Tony, and what it was like to have babies in the 70s and to have baby. I've been happily part of my daughters having their babies. Mm-hmm. And my son has a daughter who's 8 months old, but they were across the country, so I didn't get to be right there. We have to FaceTime Messenger all our nurses, and they've come to see us once. But the way childbirth is operated now is literally a world different than it was when I was having my children. It was all male doctors. There were no lactation consultants. I mean, the whole business was a kind of corporate mess. And it gives one hope to see that we have made some wonderful progress in some areas. But when it comes to food is such an emotional issue for so many people. And one of the things that's gone out with the bathwater, as it were, with women working in more interesting places and more women working and families kind of looking a little different, is nobody's in the kitchen with an apron tied on anymore. Nobody has time or energy to do some of the things that need to be done. I mean, what I feel forced to say a lot of times is you cannot be healthy unless you cook. You have to go in the kitchen and chop something. You have to. There's no way to buy it ready-made in the market or buy it in even a really nice little restaurant, whatever. The only way you really know what's in your food is if you grow it or buy it from a neighbor, which I'm a big proponent of that. If you have anything like a farmer's market anywhere near, that's where to buy your groceries.
That's right.
It's more fun, for one thing. It's way more fun.
Yeah, for sure. No, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and it, again, it's just to your point. I mean, you're 80 looking like you're 50, and obviously you're doing something right. So I think it's beneficial that we do have access to so much information because we are, whether listening to podcasts or researching. And I think now I'm at the point where I'm almost 40, and I think it's okay, at least I'm a big proponent of this, is question everything. Some of the smartest scientists, scholars in the world once thought that the Earth was flat. Through a large group of people questioning that, we now know that it's not flat. Unless you ask a couple YouTubers on YouTube, some people still believe that. But at the end of the day,
we know those guys. Yeah,
we know those guys. But I think it's important that we do question everything because this is very important. This is not like trying to pick out an outfit. This is food that you're consuming that will eventually, wreak havoc on your system, whether it's good or bad. And then you factor in microplastics and everything else that's going on, and even healthy food. There's so many things that are involved. And I think even though it is kind of stressful and it's a lot of information, I always kind of argue with friends that don't share this passion for this topic, especially as you get older and have kids, because everything that you're passionate about, most likely your kids are going to be passionate about to a certain extent. And then eventually they'll grow and have their own passions, right? Well, I mean, let's say, I mean, like, our daughter's going to eat healthy until she doesn't want to anymore. When she gets old enough, she's going to make her own decisions. But
okay, Tony, when she's 14, I want you to call me.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah. But, but that's also, I think a lot of, I had a conversation about this the other day with a buddy on a podcast where, he has a kid too about the same age, and they have screen time and they eat fast food, and our daughter just doesn't do that. So we're not going to have my daughter hang out with his kids. And I told him this. I was like, no disrespect, but again, I think kids they're just, as we know, they're sponges. And the more they hang out with people of bad influence, it's hard to control that. I mean, you can't control them forever, obviously, and what they do. But I think if you surround them with the right things and teach them the right things, that's the best you can do, right? And I just think people got to be a little bit more passionate about food, because you are giving this to your kid, and it's a big deal. I mean, I wish I knew this stuff in my 20s, because I think I wouldn't have Crohn's if I did. So.
But you're preparing your kids to follow you in your zeal about being good to the earth as well. And one of the side effects of feeding yourself and your family well is that it's inherently healthier for Mama Earth.
Yeah.
You're doing the right things by the animals and the woods and the sky. We have to stop just trumping over what's left of our most important resource, the world, the earth.
Yeah. Well said. And that's a beautiful place to end, I think, too. We're almost at an hour. You believe that?
Wait, we have to end this because I'm a grandma, so I could keep talking all night.
Listen, this will not be the first time I have you on. Maybe we have you on again.
I would be
sometime.
happy to come back.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much.
No, this was a pleasure. It's great getting to know you, and I'm excited to check out your book as well. So if you can leave, where can people find you on social media, or if you got a website?
Oh,
yeah. Like that, check out?
One simple way. It's lynnebowman.com, LYNNEBOWMAN.com. Everything is on that website. And I'm on YouTube and all the places. The book is on Amazon. You can ask your bookseller, if you'd rather buy it from a bookseller, ask them to order it for you. And tell them that you can't believe they don't already have it on the shelf. It's blowing up. And
I love it.
Would be delighted. And it's also available on Audible, which sounds funny, a cookbook on Audible, but there are a lot of stories in the book. And I've been told that people kind of like the idea of this grandma in their ear telling them how to do it in 2 ingredients or 3 ingredients, telling them how easy it is, because it is. It is approachable. Yeah. So I hope you'll look me up. Thanks.
I love it. I know I will. Listeners, I think you'll join me in the same thing. So, Lynne, thank you so much. I'll send you a note after all this is live and ready to rock and roll. And I really appreciate the time.
See you again.
Absolutely. Enjoy Cali, okay?
Okay, bye.